الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضى وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبعد. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ya ikhwan, for allowing us to travel here to Chicago, to Skokie, to sit with our brothers for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to read from the works of al-Hadith. And I request and I ask of you, ikhwan, for those of you who are present, to take notes, to take copious notes, inshaAllah ta'ala, remembering the narration, قَيِّدُ الْعِلْمِ بِالْكِتَابَةِ. Record your knowledge in writing, or preserve your knowledge in writing. And bi'idhnillahi tabarak wa ta'ala, ikhwan, so as to keep this information well preserved, bi'idhnillahi tabarak wa ta'ala. And as we know from the narration, where it was said that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah ta'ala, what was Imam Ahmad's father's name? Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, ma'al mihbara ila al-maqbara. With the inkwell until we go to the grave. And that narration, ikhwan, as some of the historians have mentioned, is when in the past we know that one of the signs of the students of hadith, in particular the young students of hadith, is you would find them with the mihbara. You would find them with the inkwell, the ink pot. And you would find, ikhwan, one of the signs of the students of hadith that you would notice on their clothing ink stains. And ink stains upon their fingers. This is from the signs of the students of hadith. Because they were always busy recording knowledge and writing the information down. So the narration goes that someone saw Imam Ahmad. This is Imam Ahl-Sunnah. And he still got the mihbara with him. You still carry the mihbara. You're Imam Ahmad, Imam Ahl-Sunnah, and still the mihbara. So as the narration goes, ikhwan, he said, ma'al mihbara ila al-maqbara. Also, ikhwan, it was said that one of the people of the past, he said, Allah fikum, they asked him, how long will you continue to record narrations? How long? You're an old man. You continue to write the narrations. For how long? He said, I'll continue to write narrations until I die and then pour whatever's left in the mihbara into my grave. With the mihbara to the maqbara. So we are reminded, ikhwan, of this tremendous tradition of recording our knowledge, and in particular, ikhwan, that which we learn from the different sciences of al-Islam. Tonight, inshallah ta'ala, ikhwan, we will begin to read from some selected narrations from the Kitab al-Muqaddimah, from the Sunan Ibn Majah, rahimahullah ta'ala. This book, ikhwan, in particular, was a book that I first came to love, of course, from reading in the books of the Sunnah, in particular the Kutub al-Sitta, the 6 books of Hadith, but in particular when I read the explanation of Shaykh Abu al-Abbad, حفظه ta'ala. And the Shaykh went into great detail in explaining that this is a book founded upon the affairs of the Aqeedah and the correct creed and the correct methodology of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And so I wanted, ikhwan, to select some narrations from the tremendous book, Kitab al-Muqaddimah, sometimes called Kitab al-Sunnah, because of what it contains from the Sunnah. And we'll talk about that title tonight, inshaAllah ta'ala. So we wanted to select some narrations from that text so as to give a foundation in regard to these narrations of the Sunnah. Let us begin first and foremost, ikhwan, with the biography of the great Imam of Hadith, Ibn Majah, rahimahullah ta'ala. Al-Dhahabi says regarding him, ikhwan, in his siyar, Ibn Majah huwa Muhammad ibn Yazid. He is Muhammad ibn Yazid, al-Hafiz, al-Kabir. He is Muhammad ibn Yazid, the great memorizer. And this title, ikhwan, al-Hafiz, ikhwan, was given, as some of the scholars mentioned, al-Mubarak-Furi in his introduction to his explanation of Tuhfat al-Ahwadi, yani of the Jami of Imam al-Tirmidhi. He talks, ikhwan, about the different titles that the scholars have been given in the past. What is the meaning of al-Muhaddith? What is the meaning of al-Hafiz? What is the meaning of Imam? To the end of that. And so Al-Hafidh Ikhwan is a title for one who has memorized a great number of narrations upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Ibn Majah, of course, is called Al-Hafidh Al-Kabir, from the great memorizers of the memorizers. Remember, he is at a time, Ikhwan, when you have the likes of Imam Al-Bukhari, and Imam Muslim, the likes of Abu Dawood, and other than them, Ikhwan, all within a similar time frame. So he is, Ikhwan, Al-Hafidh Al-Kabir, as Al-Dhahabi mentioned regarding him. Al-Hujjah, the authority. Al-Mufassir, he was a scholar of tafsir as well, Ikhwan, and quite often we come to know these scholars based on what we know of them from what they are most famous for. So when you think of Ibn Majah, many people think of Hadith. People think of the Sunnah and the Sunan. But few people are aware, Ikhwan, or perhaps not as aware, that Ibn Majah was a Mufassir, and he wrote a book called At-Tafsir. But it is from those books that were lost, Ikhwan, that we do not have in front of us, with us. But he wrote this book, Ikhwan, and this is why Al-Dhahabi says Al-Mufassir. Likewise, Ikhwan, when you mention the name Ad-Daraqutni, the great scholar of Hadith, and when you think of Ad-Daraqutni, many people, the first thing that comes to mind is Al-Ilal, the science of Al-Ilal and the science of Hadith. And this is the knowledge of the hidden defects that are found in narrations from the most intense or intricate of the sciences of Hadith, without question. But few are as aware that Ad-Daraqutni was an Imam fil Qira'ah, in Quranic recitation. He was also a scholar of Quranic recitation. Allah yabarik fikum. So we find, Ikhwan, in the biographies of these noble scholars, Ikhwan, how they were knowledgeable in more than one of the funun, more than one of the sciences of al-Islam. Abu Abdullah, his kunya. Abu Abdullah ibn Majah al-Qazwini. Al-Qazwini. Musannif al-Sunan. The author of the Sunan. What Tariq. And he was also the author of a book, At-Tariq, a history or a biography of a number of the scholars. So not only was he a mufassir, not only was he a muhaddith, he was also a mu'arrikh, a historian and a biographer. Also, this book, At-Tariq, is lost to us. It is not from those books that survived. We'll talk about that more, inshallah ta'ala, momentarily. Al-Dhahabi continues, Ikhwan, he says, Musannif al-Sunan, wat-Tariq, wat-Tafsir. Again, the author of the book As-Sunan, also At-Tariq, a book of history, Tafsir, a book of Tafsir, wa Hafidh al-Qazwin fi asrihi, and he was the memorizer of the people of Qazwin during his period, during his era. Wulida sana 9 and he was born in the year 209. He was born in 209. قال السمعاني, السمعاني, Ikhwan, who wrote a book called Al-Ansab. Al-Ansab, a book dealing with genealogy and dealing with the different ascriptions that one may have. So for example, Al-Qazwini is an ascription to Qazwin. Being from Qazwin, he is called Al-Qazwini. A person, for example, who is from Al-Maghrib is Al-Maghribi. Right? So this is what we find in this regard. And many times we'll find it also, of course, dealing with people's qaba'il, people's tribes, Anazi, or other than that. So he says, Ikhwan, in this book, Al-Ansab, a tremendous work, Ikhwan, as it relates to the different genealogies and ascriptions that one can find on the different scholars, explaining where these genealogies come from, what places these tribes come from, and what scholars had similar genealogy, similar ascriptions. So if he mentions the people of Tirmidhi, he'll give you a list not only of Abu Isa, but other scholars in different funun and different sciences who also had the same ascription as Tirmidhi. And by the way, Ikhwan, one of the things you'll learn in that book, for example, is it can be said in different ways. Some of the scholars said Tirmidhi, some said Tarmidhi, some said Turmudi. So it is pronounced in different ways. And this is one of the things that you benefit and you learn from a book like Al-Ansab. So you learn and benefit from the different pronunciations and the ways that it can be pronounced. Al-Qazwini, هذه نسبة إلى قزوين. He says this is an ascription to Qazwin, وهي إحدى المدائن المعروفة بنواحي أصبهان. And it is one of, he says, one of the cities, the well-known cities, he says, on the outskirts of Asbahan. And also, as Shaykh Muqbil used to say, and this is known, that it can also be said Asbahan. Asbahan bil-ba' or Asbahan bil-fa. Both of them are actually correct in that regard. يقالها باب الجنة. And this place, Qazwin, was called the Gate of Jannah, Bab al-Jannah, yani from those names that were given to this particular place. كان منها, and as we just mentioned before, كان منها جماعة من العلماء والأئمة في كل فن. As-Sam'ani says what? And from this place are a number of scholars and imams in different sciences. In the different sciences. So again, Ikhwan, and he goes on to name, not only in this affair, but in other affairs, from those matters. Min shuyukhihi, from his shuyukh, and other than this, but we'll mention for now tonight, from his shuyukh al-Bukhari. From his shuyukh, Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala. قال أبو يعلى الخليلي, regarding Ibn Majah, he said, هو ثقة كبير. He is a great, trustworthy narrator. Ibn Majah is a great, trustworthy narrator, muttafaqun alayhi. And there is consensus among the scholars concerning his status. There is consensus among the scholars concerning the status of Ibn Majah from the great imams of the Sunnah. Muhtajjun bihi, as we said, an authority. Lahu ma'rifa bil hadith. He was knowledgeable of the sciences of hadith. And we say the sciences of hadith, ikhwan. As we know, the science of hadith, or hadith itself, is made up of different sciences. And this is what we learn when we study Mustalah al-Hadith and other than that. Al-Dhahabi also said, ikhwan, regarding him, كان ابن ماجه حافظا ناقدا صادقا واسع العلم. He said, ikhwan, that he was a memorizer, a naqid. He was a critic. And when we say critic, ikhwan, we mean he was one who looked into the likes of the chains of narration and clarified the authentic from the weak, clarified, ikhwan, the condition of the different narrators. And so when you find the scholars, ikhwan, calling someone a naqid, yani a critic, it is a statement of praise. One who looked into the narrations and clarified those who were trustworthy from those who were not trustworthy. Those who were strong from those who had poor memories, and to the end of that. This was a praiseworthy ascription. You find the likes of al-Dhahabi being called a naqid, as he looks through the different narrators and explains and clarifies the strong memorizers from the weak memorizers, and the people of innovation from the people of Sunnah. And to the end of that, unfortunately today, ikhwan, the likes of this has been flipped on its head. And now when the people call someone a critic, they mean it as a pejorative. They mean it as yani fi tanaqqus, to belittle and to defame a person. They call him a critic. But amongst the people of hadith in the past, ikhwan, this was a lofty term, a lofty and noble title to be called a naqid. This is how the sunnah was preserved. This is how the sunnah was preserved. Al-Mu'allimi, ikhwan, Al-Mu'allimi al-Yamani, in his tremendous work, ikhwan, Ahammiya ilm al-Rijal, the importance of the science of Rijal, he mentions that after the generation of he said, during the generation of the Tabi'een, rarely would you find an individual who was weak because he was a liar, for example. They were so close to the generation of the companions and that great generation that rarely would you find from those Tabi'een, would you find liars, those who would lie on the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Mu'allimi said most of the people at that time who were graded weak in narration at that period, for the most part, was because of them having poor memories and the likes of this, for example. And then Al-Mu'allimi goes on to mention in this book, he says, ikhwan, that after this you found the scholars following up the people of narration in their homes and in the streets. In other words, in every affair of their lives, following them up, clarifying those who were strong from those who were weak, believed, those who were liars from those who were truthful, those who were upright from those who were wicked sinners. Because in this, ikhwan, is the preservation of the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How do you think the sunnah came down to us in its pristine form? To where you can grab Bukhari from the bookshelf, Muslim from the bookshelf, and read the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It came down by way of these principles, these conditions that these scholars use to clarify the different narrators. Sadiqan, truthful. He was a man of truth who spoke the truth. Wasi al-ilm. And he was an ocean of knowledge. He had expansive knowledge as it relates to the sciences of al-Islam. Al-Dhahabi said regarding him, ikhwan, mata fi Ramadan. He died in the month of Ramadan. Sana 73 wa 200 in the year 273. So if he was born in 209 and he died in 273, how old would he have been? 64 years of age. Rahimahullah ta'ala. Na'am. Aqidatuhu wa manhajuhu. What was the aqidah of Ibn Majah? As we are now studying a book, Kitab al-Sunnah, Kitab al-Muqaddimah, regarding the affairs of creed, regarding the affairs of aqidah. So what is the aqidah of Ibn Majah? Rahimahullah ta'ala. Qala Ibn Kathir fil Bidayah wal Nihaya. Tremendous work of history, written by the great scholar Ibn Kathir, Rahimahullah ta'ala. Ibn Majah al-Qazwini, Sahib al-Sunan. Ibn Majah al-Qazwini, the author of al-Sunan, who Abu Abdullah, Muhammad ibn Yazid ibn Majah. And Ibn Majah, ikhwan, that name Majah, the ulama differ as to where that name Majah came from. Some say Majah was actually a nickname for his father, Yazid. Others say it was a nickname for his mother, or the name of his mother, or refers to his mother. Others say it was a grandparent. Perhaps it was a grandparent or a nickname for one of his grandparents. What many of the scholars have established or came to, or the position that they have arrived at, is that perhaps it was a nickname for his father, and Allah knows best. Muhammad ibn Yazid ibn Majah, Sahib Kitab al-Sunan al-Mashhura, the author of the well-known book As-Sunan, وهي الدالة على عمله وعلمه وتبحره واتلاعه واتباعه للسنة في الأصول والفروع. Listen to what Ibn Kathir says, ikhwan, the great scholar Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah ta'ala. He says, this well-known book As-Sunan indicates his work, the works of Ibn Majah, his deeds. It indicates his knowledge. It indicates his scholarship. It indicates his adherence to the sunnah in the fundamentals and the subsidiary matters. And of course the fundamentals, ikhwan, this relates back to the affairs of creed. When we talk about this idea of the fundamentals, so his book, ikhwan, clarifies and establishes for us his methodology, his creed is there in the book. And that's why, ikhwan, when one says, for example, that the A'imma, that At-Tirmidhi was this, Shafi'i or Maliki, many of them claim the Tirmidhi, as the noble scholar Muhammad Al-Athiyubi mentions, ikhwan, in the introduction to his explanation of the Jami' of Imam At-Tirmidhi. Many of them claim the Tirmidhi, many of them claim the Muslim. They would claim him. Why? Because sometimes in their books they would agree with a madhab min al-madhahib. But when you look at their works in totality, what you find from it, ikhwan, is that they were mujtahidun. They were looking at the evidences, ikhwan, and arriving at that which they thought to be correct based on the evidences, as we learn from the likes of Shaykh Al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala. Likewise, we can learn from them, from their creed, from what we see in their works. Ikhwan, go to Kitab al-Iman in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari. Every narration is a defense of the Aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and a refutation upon the people of innovation. The people talk, ikhwan, about don't busy yourselves with innovation. Stop talking about innovation. All we hear is Antum tudandinuna hawl al-bid'ah. Go read al-Bukhari. Instead of wasting your time, go read al-Bukhari. We say, okay, go to Kitab al-Iman. And every narration in the book, a clarification of the creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and a refutation upon the people of innovation. Every narration in the Kitab. So therefore, ikhwan, we say to them that this, ikhwan, is what we learn from the A'imma, the Imams of the Sunnah. And as it was said, ikhwan, that these scholars of hadith in every generation, they were the ones who were defending the Sunnah and defending the creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah from the people of innovation. Imam al-Bukhari, Khalq Af'al al-Ibad. Imam Ahmad, Usul al-Sunnah. Look at the scholars of hadith, ikhwan, la fikum. Until al-Hakim, ikhwan, la fikum, he mentioned in the introduction to his work, Ma'rifa, Ulum al-Hadith, he says, ikhwan, that he saw the innovation began to spread and that the Sunnah became something not as widespread among the people. So I sat down and I recorded this book. This is the ulama of Islam, scholars of hadith, defending the creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. In our time, the likes of Shaykh Ibn Baz, Muhaddith, the likes of Shaykh Al-Albani, refuting the people of innovation from the Murji'ah, from the Khawarij, from the Ikhwan Muslimin, name them, ikhwan. You find the likes of Shaykh Al-Albani refuting them. So much so, ikhwan, that you find them, their animosity and their enmity for Shaykh Al-Albani, ikhwan, was tremendous. Alhamdulillah, it's a praise for Shaykh Al-Albani that the likes of those individuals hated him so. To the point, ikhwan, recently, in our area, someone tried to call Shaykh Al-Albani, the great Muhaddith Al-Albani, tried to say that Shaykh Al-Albani was jahil fil hadith. Wallahi al-waqi' yarud alayh. The reality, ikhwan, what is the reality? What we see with our very own eyes refutes that man's claim. And then he tried to quote from this man, Abdullah al-Ghumari. This Ghumari, ikhwan, who was a Sufi, who was a Quburi, who was Ash'ari. You name it, ikhwan, he had Tawam. How many affairs, ikhwan, did this man have with him, ikhwan? And he had the audacity to speak about Shaykh Al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala. And someone had the audacity to quote from him, saying that Shaykh Al-Albani was jahil in hadith. When the A'imma of this time, ikhwan, testified to the knowledge of Shaykh Al-Albani, what did Shaykh Ibn Baz say? ما أعلم أحد تحت أديم السماء أعلم بحديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من محمد ناصر الدين الألباني. He said, I do not know, personally, this is Shaykh Ibn Baz saying, I do not know of anyone more under the pillars of the heavens, more knowledgeable of the science of hadith than Nasr al-Din al-Albani. This is the testimony, ikhwan, of the ulama of our time. Shaykh al-Albani refuting the people of innovation. Shaykh Rabi' a muhaddith. Shaykh Rabi' is a muhaddith. All you need to do is go back and look at Shaykh Rabi's defense of Sahih Muslim. Go back and look at those books where Shaykh Rabi is defending the Sahih of Imam Muslim against the likes of Milibari and those individuals, ikhwan. Shaykh Rabi' muhaddith. Muhaddith, ikhwan, defending the Sunnah. So in every generation, ikhwan, we find the scholars of hadith at the forefront. Shaykh Muqbil, at the forefront, ikhwan, of defending the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the correct creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So he was, ikhwan, as we said, known by his book, his actions, his scholarship, his adherence to the Sunnah in the fundamentals and in the subsidiary matters. As for his book, ikhwan, as-Sunan, what is a Sunan? What is a Sunan? All of us, ikhwan, inshallah ta'ala, we read from the Sunan of Ibn Majah, the Sunan of An-Nisa'i, the Sunan of Abu Dawud, the Sijistani. The scholars have explained and clarified the ta'rif, the definition, ikhwan, of a Sunan. كتب الحديث التي تشتمل على الأحاديث النبوية المتعلقة بالأحكام الشرعية. There are books, ikhwan, Allah barik fikum, that comprise prophetic narrations, prophetic traditions relating to matters of jurisprudence. So we find, for example, Kitab al-Tahara, Kitab al-Salah, Kitab al-Hajj, Kitab al-Nikah, Kitab al-Buyu' and the likes of this, ikhwan. Allah barik fikum. So are those books, ikhwan, that contain prophetic narrations relating to the matters of jurisprudence, al-murattaba ala abwab al-fiqh, organized according to issues, again, of jurisprudence. And this shows us the fiqh of these ulama. You want to know what Ibn Majah's fiqh is? Look at his book. Look at his chapter headings. Look at the narrations that he collects in each chapter. You will see the fiqh of Ibn Majah. And this is what we find in these books, ikhwan, known as a Sunan. مثل Sunan al-Imam Abi Dawud al-Sijistani. What was his name? Mu'adh? al-Sijistani. وسنن الإمام أبي عبد الرحمن النسائي. His name? أحسنت. معاذ هو بوحده يعني ماذا يا إخوان؟ وينكم؟ خير إن شاء الله. نعم. النسائي. That description goes back to what? What does that description النسائي go back to? Anybody know? Thought. So is it Nisa'i or Nasa'i? لا واحد منهما. النسائي. أحسنت. لماذا ما النسائي؟ هو قال بأن الرجال سرقوا المدينة فلماذا النسائي ولا النسائي؟ لا طيب لا بأس. وأنا أسأل الآن لماذا النسائي بالفتحة؟ لا لا يبالي فيه. حياك الله. It's from the verb nasa. Nasa. What does nasa mean? Forget. They forgot the women and they left. They forgot the women and they left the city. That's what's called an-nasa'i. Nasa. Allah yabarik fiikum. That's what you learn also in that book by As-Sam'ani al-Ansab. Allah yabarik fiikum. Allah yabarik fiikum. Hayakum Allah. Khair inshallah. Abu Dawud died in 275. I forgot, let me mention the dates of the deaths. Abu Dawud in 275. And Nasa'i in 303. And Nasa'i in 303. What did we say? Ibn Majah died in what? Khair inshallah ta'ala. قال الشيخ عبد الحق الدهلوي, from the ulama of Hind. And this is narrated by Siddiq Hasan Khan from the ulama of Hind, ikhwan, and the ulama of Hind, we were speaking about this earlier today, ikhwan, that the scholars of hadith from Hind were responsible for helping to preserve the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during that period, when you had the likes of Al-Mubarak 40, who did the explanation of At-Tirmidhi, when you had the likes of Al-Azim Abadi, who did the explanation of the Sunan of Abi Dawud. You had great scholars from the likes of Shah Wali Allah al-Dihlawi and his tremendous book, Hujjatullah al-Baligha. Shaykh Abu mentioned, ikhwan, the great efforts that we found from the scholars of Hind, ikhwan, to the point where he mentioned that from those who helped establish Dar al-Hadith al-Khairiyah there in Mecca were from the scholars of India. A tremendous affair as it relates to that. So he says, ikhwan, regarding this, الدهلوي كتابه واحد من الكتب الإسلامية التي يقالها الأصول الستة. His book is one of the books, ikhwan, that is called or named al-Usul al-Sitta, the 6 fundamental works of hadith. Right, the 6 fundamental works of hadith. Wal-Kutub al-Sitta, or more famously known as the 6 books of hadith. Right, or more famously known as the 6 books of hadith. Also, they've been called as-Sihah al-Sitta, the 6 authentic books. And we know, ikhwan, of course, that outside of Bukhari and Muslim, you're going to find weak narrations in these texts, in these books. In particular, Ibn Majah. many of the narrations that he relates outside of the other 5 books, many of them are weak. There are weaknesses as it relates to them, and we'll talk about that momentarily, inshallah ta'ala. So many have rejected that particular title, the 6 authentic books. قلت, and this of course is a Dehlawi, وَالْأُمَّهَاتِ السِّتْ. And some say that they are called the 6 principal books of Hadith. The 6 principal books of Hadith. وَجُمْلَ مَا فِي سُنَنِهِ 4,000 hadith. And the number of narrations to be found, in total, in the Sunnah of Ibn Majah are 4,000 narrations. 4,000 narrations. وعدد كتبها 32 كتابا. And the number of books. Now this is important. So what we have in these works, Ikhwan, so we have the larger book itself. So it's the Sunan, right? So that's the larger work. Within that we have smaller books. So this is the larger book, the Sunan, and within that we have smaller books. So we have, as we mentioned earlier, Kitab al-Tahara, the book of purification, Kitab al-Salah, the book of prayer. We have Kitab al-Hajj, the book of Hajj, the book of Nikah, and to the end of that. The number of books within this are 32. 32 books. وَأَبْوَابُهَا 500 وَأَلْفْ بَابٍ. And as for the chapters, so within those smaller books are chapters that make up those books, and they are 1,500 chapters. 1,500 chapters. Now, Ikhwan, this is very intricate knowledge, but we should come to know these books that should be vital and vitally important to our lives. How are we learning the Sunnah except by way of these texts, except by way of these books? We should know these books inside and out. They should be known to us and understood to us. We should know the methodology of these scholars and the likes of this in the preservation of the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. نعم. قال ابن أثير كتابه كتاب مفيد قوي النفع في الفقه. He said that this book, Ikhwan, Ibn Athir said, is a very beneficial book, strong in the affairs of fiqh. Now I need to make a point here, Ikhwan, because often what we find from some of the people of the madhahib in particular, we find them making statements like, so-and-so is a scholar of hadith, but he's not a scholar of fiqh. They said that in particular about Shaykh Al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, they said, nah, scholar of hadith, but he's not a scholar of fiqh. Well, that is because these individuals don't understand what hadith is. Hadith is riwayah and dirayah. So it is this knowledge of the chains of narration. That's the riwayah. Fulan narrated from so-and-so. So-and-so narrated from so-and-so. Right? That's as it relates to the chains of narration. But a dirayah, Ikhwan, relates to the understanding, the interpretation, the application of those narrations. And to truly be a muhaddith, Ikhwan, you just can't have knowledge of the chains of narration. So-and-so was from Baghdad, and he narrated from so-and-so from Misr. You can't just have knowledge of the chains of narration, you must have knowledge of the application and the interpretation of the metan, the text, the body of the narration as well. So if Shaykh Al-Albani is a muhaddith, then by default, he is a faqih. Because you can't be a scholar of hadith if you're not a scholar of the science of hadith. And where does the fiqh come from? Except from hadith, except from Quran and hadith. Where else does it come from? So this is why, Ikhwan Allah bifikum, you not only find them saying the likes of this about the noble scholar Shaykh Al-Albani. Don't think for a moment, Ikhwan, that they stopped at Al-Albani. We find in the past people who said this about Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah, muhaddith, narrator, but not a faqih. Abu Hurairah, who the Sahaba came to, and to the Tabi'een came to for fatwa, for verdicts as it relates to the affairs of the religion. And there's a tremendous work, Ikhwan, al-Difa' an Abu Hurairah, the defense of Abu Hurairah, where in that text they clarify the different scholars from the Tabi'een and the likes of them who came to Abu Hurairah seeking fatwa as it relates to matters of religion, matters of fiqh and the likes of this. So these individuals, Ikhwan, their poison doesn't stop even those from this generation, but rather reaches back all the way to the noble companions of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even the ulama, the scholars among them. لكن فيه أحاديث ضعيفة We continue. Ibn Kathir says, however, there are weak narrations. There are some weak narrations. Bal munkara, some very weak narrations. يعني in the Sunnah of Ibn Majah. حتى نقل عن الحافظ المزي. الحافظ المزي, from the contemporaries of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, رحمه الله ta'ala, and who married his daughter to one of his students. I've asked this question a million times. Let's see if anybody remembers. Al-Mizzi married his daughter to one of his students, one of his well-known students. He was a contemporary of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala. Who do you think he married his daughter to from those students? Ibn Kathir. Who said that? MashaAllah, Hasan. Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir. We mentioned Ibn Kathir earlier. Naam. So you see, they kept it in the family. An honor to marry his daughter to one of the noble scholars of the religion. Allah fikum. Naam. Al-Mizzi said what, ikhwan? أن الغالب فيما تفرد به الضعف. Rather, he says that many of the narrations that he singularly narrates outside of the other 5 books of hadith, he says in them are weaknesses. And this is why, ikhwan, when we narrate in the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, we must make tathabbut. We must clarify whether or not the narration is authentic or not. We want to be mindful and careful not to be from those who just narrate willy-nilly. From those who say the Prophet ﷺ said, the Prophet ﷺ did. La ya ikhwan. One must clarify the authenticity of the narration. So, for example, this person comes to you and says, Alik kada, you must do such and such. You say to him, Dalil, Hatu burhanakum in kuntum sadiqeen. Bring your proof if you're truthful. The person said, the Prophet ﷺ said such and such and such and such. So you say to him, Tayyib, where is that narration collected? The person says, Ibn Majah collected it in Kitab Kada, in such a book. Your next question is, okay, Tayyib, who authenticated the narration? Who clarified the authenticity of that particular narration? Again, outside of al-Bukhari and Muslim, ikhwan, one finds out the veracity of the narration. And we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the likes of Shaykh al-Albani, ikhwan, who spent a generation, a lifetime, sifting through the chains of narration, clarifying the authentic from the weak, and establishing works of hadith in that regard. So he says, ikhwan, Allah fikum, from that are narrations that are da'if. As we said before, ikhwan, we are mindful of that, so as not to fall under that threat. من كذب عليه متعمدا فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. Whoever lies upon me intentionally, let him take his seat in the fire. Now, Anas ibn Malik, who we'll talk about momentarily, ikhwan, radiallahu anhu, from the mukthirun, from those companions who narrate over 1,000 narrations on the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did Anas ibn Malik say regarding this affair? He said it was that narration that prevented him from narrating even more on the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, as the ulama have explained and clarified for us, Anas ibn Malik was a noble companion. He wasn't about to lie on the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what did he understand from that narration? Whoever lies upon me, intentionally let him take his seat in the fire. He understood from that, ikhwan, that if you narrate abundantly, the more you narrate, the greater chance it is for you to make mistakes and therefore attribute something to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he did not say. So he understood from that the other meaning of the word kadhib, ikhwan, in the Arabic language, which also means to make a mistake, and yukhti. So you narrate abundantly, you keep narrating and narrating and narrating, and you just keep talking without any concern, without any verification. So eventually, ikhwan, you're going to say something perhaps that is incorrect. And this shows the wara', this shows the awareness, the great taqwa of the noble companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says after this, ikhwan, Ibn Athir, لذا لم يضفه غير واحد إلى الخمسة بل جعل السادس الموطن. This is interesting, ikhwan, that he says that more than one scholar did not actually count Ibn Majah's Sunan from Kutub al-Sittah. Many of them actually counted the Muwatta of Malik, the Muwatta of Imam Malik, as the 6th or one of the 6 books of Hadith. But the reason, and I mentioned the reason why, many of the scholars, or from the scholars, are those who included in Kutub al-Sittah as opposed to the Muwatta of Malik. Who knows why? Anybody know why? Why Ibn Majah's and Sunan is considered from the 6 and not the Muwatta of Malik? لا يعني موطأ the beaten path, I like this. طيب, we'll read it now. What does that mean? Well, the Muwatta, oh, you mean why? Because you're saying Ibn Majah's, the way he organized his book, you're saying is, that's your point. طيب, خير إن شاء الله تعالى. Let's read what Ibn Hajar says, إخوان. Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar, regarding this. He says, أول من أضاف Ibn Majah إلى الستة, the first of those to include the Sunan Ibn Majah in the 6 books of Hadith was Abul Fadl, Muhammad ibn Tahir. Abul Fadl, Muhammad ibn Tahir. ثم الحافظ عبد الغني في كتاب الإكمال في أسماء الرجال, and other than him, إخوانا برفيكم. Now this is why. وقدمه على الموطأ لكثرة زوائده. The reason why those scholars and other than them included the Sunan of Ibn Majah even over the Muwatta of Malik, which is a tremendous work, is because of the many narrations that are found in the Sunan of Ibn Majah that are not found in the other 6 books of Hadith, the other 5 books of Hadith. So Ibn Majah has several narrations in his work that you can't find in Bukhari and Muslim and Abu Dawood and Nisa'i. And because of that, Ikhwan, from the scholars are those who included as the 6th book, or one of the 6 books of Hadith. Keeping in mind, Ikhwan, that many of the narrations of the Muwatta can be found in Bukhari. Right? Imam al-Bukhari's, of course, that famous chain of narration, Yani Ali al-Madini, An-Nafi', or like this on Ibn Umar, that golden chain they call it, the golden chain. So many of those narrations, Ikhwan, that are in Bukhari can be found in the Muwatta of Malik.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Ikhwan, regarding the adhan, the Prophet ﷺ told us to repeat after the mu'adhin. And also we find, after saying Hayya al-salah, Hayya al-falah, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Which one does one do? Does he repeat after the mu'adhin, or does he say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah? Huh? Okay, everybody's saying it is. So what about the narration that says to repeat after? Huh? Say it again. Yeah. طيب. He also said to repeat after the muadhin in another narration. Khair, homework, ikhwan, for tomorrow. You know I give homework out in these things. Research, find out the answer to that question. It's not that simple. Come back tomorrow and tell me which one is which as it relates to that, inshallah ta'ala. Hayakum Allah ya ikhwan. Can we go a little longer? We're going after Isha as well? Khair, inshallah. طيب, let's continue, ikhwan, for a bit. Alhamdulillah, we're here together, ikhwan. Let us benefit, inshallah ta'ala. Most of you brothers from the area, from Chicago, from the Skokie area. Huh? No? You from so okay, so now you say from Chicago. Now we're gonna do this, inshallah. Allah. I said the Chicago area. Khair, inshallah. طيب إخوان, let us read now from the great Shaykh, the Muhaddith of Al-Medina, Shaykh Abul al-Abbad, حفظه الله تعالى. He says, إخوان, مقدمة ابن ماجه بدأه رحمه الله تعالى بمقدمة تتعلق بالعقيدة واتباع السنة. He said, إخوان, that he opened up his book with, as we said, Kitab al-Muqaddimah, an introduction that is connected to or includes matters of creed, belief, as we said, related to creed, and adherence to the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that, ikhwan, when we see the word, as we said, some people call this Kitab al-Sunnah, that what is intended here by the word sunnah, ikhwan, is a comprehensive term. A comprehensive term. And it includes in that, ikhwan, the aqidah, the creed, and the belief of the people of sunnah, and their methodology, and adherence to that, the affairs of the sunnah. مشتملة على عدة أبواب, and comprised, as we said already, of a number of chapters. How many chapters in the book? Nah, I said chapters, 1,500. Listen good, ikhwan. 1,500 chapters, we said. ذكر فيها مباحث الإيمان. And he mentions in that, ikhwan, matters of iman, of faith, as we mentioned before. You look in these works of the scholars, ikhwan, we find them talking about iman, belief, narrations in defense of the creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and refutation of the people of innovation, wal ittiba', and also, as we said, ikhwan, adherence to the sunnah. وتبلغ أحاديث هذه المقدمة 266 حديثا, and this chapter comprises 266 narrations. This introduction, the book of the introduction, comprises 266 narrations. How many did we select from the 266? Somebody tell me. How many in the book? Huh? 21? 21 narrations? Khair, inshallah ta'ala. And by the way, ikhwan, the book has spaces for taking notes as well, inshallah ta'ala. It's always good to annotate a text within the text. If you look at the works of the likes of Shaykh Al-Albani, his books in his library, sometimes you'll see in the Shaykh's books they'll have images, pictures of the Shaykh's books in his library, and you'll see a bunch of footnotes in the margins of the pages. The Shaykh taking notes within the body of the text. He could have wrote it in a notebook somewhere, but when you write in the book, ikhwan, it's almost like you're entering into almost a back and forth with the text, right? And you have it right there in front of you, you're making the notes on the page. And Shaykh Muqbil, I have some books that he gave me to translate, and I have the Shaykh's actual handwritten notes within the body of the book itself, clarifying this, take this out, add this, do that. Instructions as it relates to the translation of these works. So again, that's why we put that together so that people could write inside of the book itself. Allah yabarik feekum. 266 narrations in the Muqaddimah. Shaykh Ubaid, he says after this, Shaykh Ubaid al-Jabri, حفظه الله تعالى, who also has a tremendous explanation of Kitab al-Muqaddimah. Shaykh Ubaid, he says, Kitab al-Muqaddimah. وَالْمُقَدِّمَ مَا يَقْدُمْ الشَّيْء. He says that the Muqaddimah is that which precedes something, begins something. فَهُوَ إِمَامٌ مَا بَعْدُهُ. So it is like that which goes before something else. That which goes before something else. وَالْمَلْحُوظ هُنَا أَنَّ الْقَزْوِينِ. And what is noteworthy here, the Shaykh says, is that Al-Qazwini, of course, meaning Ibn Majah, وَهُوَ إِمَام مِنَ أَئِمَّةِ السُّنَّةِ جعل كتاب المقدمة في مسلك أهل السنة. And he said, ikhwan, that Ibn Majah, and he is from the Imams of the Sunnah, he made this Kitab al-Muqaddimah upon the methodology of the people of Hadith, the people of Sunnah. Upon the methodology and the way of the people of Sunnah. في الأقوال, in statement, والأعمال, and action. وَصَدَّرَ كِتَابَهُ بِهَا. And he opened his book with this, establishing before anything else, before he got into issues of fiqh, before he got into issues of tahara, before he got into issues of hajj, before he got into issues of nikah, before he got into issues of the issues of fiqh. He started with this book regarding the matters of creed and the matters of belief first and foremost. Why? Why, ikhwan? And Shaykh Abu said this is the way of the people of Sunnah. That's right. If that foundation is not correct, then anything that comes after it is not going to be correct, ikhwan. It is, as they say, ikhwan, the fruit of a bitter tree. If the foundation, if the creed is not right, then the action itself, ikhwan, what benefit is it for the end? What does it avail the person? So the quburi, he's at the grave. He's supplicating. And the person might say, well, supplication is ibadah. Ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. Supplication is ibadah, yes or no? But if he's supplicating to the inhabitants of a grave, the inhabitants of graves, the creed is corrupt. There's a creed of shirk, and therefore, what does that supplication avail him? Rather, he's incurring sin by making the likes of that supplication. So if the foundation of the creed is not correct, then that which comes after it won't be correct. It is the fruit of a bitter tree. And this is why Shaykh Abu mentions that Ibn Majah is following the methodology of the people of Sunnah in beginning his work with those matters of creed and belief. وهذا يدل على عظيم مكانة السنة. And this indicates the great station of the Sunnah, والدعوة إليها, and the call to the Sunnah. This indicates the great station of the Sunnah and the call to the Sunnah عنده, يعني the importance of calling to the Sunnah, the importance that he placed on this, talking about Ibn Majah here, that he placed on calling to the Sunnah. فكأنه رحمه الله يقول, as if he was saying, هذه أحاديث تتضمن الحظ على سنة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في الأقوال والأعمال والاعتقاد. It is as if he is saying, ikhwan, here are the narrations. These narrations that I am now collecting comprise an encouragement of following the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in statement, in action, and in belief. This is what we find from these narrations. And this is why he starts his book with this affair. And we, ikhwan, if we're going to be upon the methodology of the people of sunnah, we start with the creed first. We start with the fundamental principles of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. This is why Al-Albani has that book. What is it called? At-Tawheed awwalan. Tawheed first. Ibn al-Qayyim, what did he say, ikhwan, rahimahullah ta'ala? He said, ikhwan, every chapter in the Quran deals with Tawheed. He said, no. But rather, he said, again, let me restate that. Ibn al-Qayyim says, every ayah in the Quran, every verse in the Quran relates to a tawheed. Every verse in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in some way is related to a tawheed. Either the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, the reward of the muwahhidun, the punishment of the mushrikun. All of it, ikhwan, is connected to a tawheed. Allah yabarik. So we begin first and foremost with the affairs of a tawheed. We begin first and foremost with the affairs of the creed, the correct aqidah. So much so, ikhwan, I've mentioned this so many times over so many years, ikhwan, but it is important to reiterate and repeat. The Quran repeats verses. From the methodology of the Prophet teaching was repetition. He would repeat things, as the scholars have mentioned, and we see in the narrations, he would repeat things 3 times. We just studied this in Ash-Shama'il, the book of At-Tirmidhi, and the characteristics of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would repeat things 3 times by way of repetition. At any rate, Shaykh Al-Albani mentions, ikhwan, regarding the hadith of Al-Jariyah, the narration of the slave girl, collected by Imam Muslim in his Sahih, Allah yabarik, that when the noble companion Muawiyah ibn al-Hakam al-Sulami, and after this, ikhwan, we'll break for the prayer and come back. When he struck that girl, because of her losing one of the flock, one of the sheep, he felt bad, he had remorse, he had nadam, he had regret for that which he had done, and he intended to free her. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, bring her to me. He asked her, he said, Ain Allah? Where is Allah? She said, Fis sama. Allah is above the heavens. He said, وَمَنْ أَنَا? And who am I? أَنْتَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Prophet ﷺ turned to Muawiyah and said, أَعْتِقْهَا فَإِنَّهَا مُؤْمِنَةٌ. Free her, for indeed she is a believer. He testified to her belief because of her creed and that which she answered in the loftiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the point that Shaykh Al-Albani makes from this, ikhwan, is that the creed of Ahl Sunnah was so widespread, so well known amongst the companions, that even the slave girl who was far from the circles of knowledge, she wasn't sitting in the lessons. She wasn't in the masjid in the lesson. She was off, Allah barik fikum, tending to the flock, tending to the sheep. But because the creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah was so widespread amongst the companions, even a common person from amongst the companions, like this particular slave girl, knew the creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And Shaykh Al-Albani said, now look at it today. Look at how the affair has flipped today, where you can find a PhD from Al-Azhar University, and you ask him, Ain Allah? Allah fi kulli makan. PhD, and he says Allah is in every place. Now here's an individual, like Ikhwan, who went through the bachelor's degree and through the master's degree and through the PhD program and don't know how to answer the question, where is Allah? And now we find Ikhwan, alhamdulillah, in our masajid. The masajid of Ahl Sunnah, you bring me one of the shabab, one of the youth in the corner of the masjid, who studied under the imams and the students of knowledge in these masajid and in the homes of the people of Sunnah. You ask him, where is Allah? He says, Allah fis sama. Allah is above the heavens. That child knows better than that PhD. And that is why, ikhwan, as the ulama have explained for us, ikhwan, that those papers don't mean a thing. If you don't have the correct understanding, it's a piece of paper. It is nothing but a piece of paper. And what did Shaykh Muqbil say? How many people have a PhD in fiqh? وَلَا فِقْهَ لَهُ. And they have no fiqh. They have no fiqh whatsoever. Allah yabarik fikum. Shaykh Muhammad al-Ethiopi, from the muhaddithun, the scholars of hadith of the time, his explanations of al-Nasa'i and al-Tirmidhi and the likes of that, Shaykh Muqbil said they are written upon the way of the likes of Ibn Hajar and Fath al-Bari. In like fashion, in the same methodology, expansive encyclopedias of the Sunnah. He said that people used to ask him, why didn't you go and finish your PhD? And he said, why am I going to go and write this bahth, risala for a PhD when I'm explaining the Sunan of Ibn Majah? When I'm taking the time to explain the Sunan of al-Nasa'i? When I'm taking the time to explain the Sunan, the Jami' of Imam al-Tirmidhi? And then these PhD people are coming to me for questions, for answers. He said, I'm not in need of it. Allah yabarik fikum. But in our time, ikhwan, unfortunately, people have become infatuated with these degrees. But alhamdulillah, we said under the lights of Shaykh Muqbil, who had degrees. And I remember him saying, ikhwan, if you asked me where the degree was, I couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you where to find it. He said, because it has no value with me. What has value with me, the Shaykh said, is al-ilm. His knowledge and application of that knowledge. That's what matters to us. That's what we're concerned about. Ask for a piece of paper, ikhwan, you can take it or you can leave it. Allah yabarik fikum. So we'll end here, inshallah ta'ala. Hayakum Allah, and we'll pick up after Salatul Isha, bi-idhnillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala.